Hello everyone, welcome back to the third episode of Creep Week. It is Tuesday's episode, and today we will be reading EYELESS Jack. There are two stories for EYELESS Jack that I will be reading today, and it will be the original and someone's fan fiction of his origin story, but the second one is because it brings me a little bit of nostalgia, so that's why I'm going to be reading it as well. I'm going to read the original first, and then I will be reading the, fan fiction of how he came to be. So, without further ado, let's get started. Hello. My name is Mitch. I'm here to tell you guys about an experience I had. I don't know if it was paranormal or whatever stupid words people use to describe supernatural phenomena, but after that thing visited me, I believe in that paranormal trash now. A week after I moved in with my brother, Edwin, after my house foreclosed, I finished unpacking. Edwin liked the idea of me moving in since we had not seen each other for about 10 years, so I was excited too. I soon fell asleep after I moved in. After that first week, I heard rustling noises coming from outside at about 1 in the morning. I thought it was a raccoon, so I ignored it and tried to fall asleep. The next morning, I told Edwin about it, and he agreed. The next night, however, I thought I heard my window opening, and a loud thump, as if something entered my room. I darted up and looked around my room, but saw nothing. The next morning, Edwin dropped his coffee cup when he saw me. He held up a nearby mirror, and I saw myself. I had a large gash in my left cheek. After I was rushed to the hospital, my doctor told me that I must have been sleepwalking, but then he showed me something that made my blood turn cold. He lifted up my shirt to reveal a sewn-up incision where my kidneys were. I stared into his eyes, mine widening. "You somehow lost your left kidney last night," my doctor told me. "We don't know how, though. Sorry, Mitch." The next night was my breaking point. Around midnight, I woke up to see a truly horrifying sight. I was staring face to face with a creature with a black hoodie and dark blue mask with no nose or mouth staring down at me. The thing that scared me the most was that it had no eyes, just empty, black sockets. The creature also had some black substance dripping from its sockets. I grabbed a camera from the nearby mantle and took a picture. Immediately after taking the shot, the creature lunged at me and tried to claw open my chest to get to my lungs. I stopped it by kicking it in the face as I ran out of my room. I grabbed my wallet. I would need the money. I ran out of my brother's house into the night, and I eventually ended up in the woods near Edwin's house and tripped on a rock. I fell unconscious and woke up in the hospital. My doctor, the same one who treated me before, entered the room. "I have good news and bad news, Mitch," my doctor started. "The good news is that you had minor injuries, and your parents are going to pick you up." I sighed with relief. "The bad news is that your brother has been killed by some thing. Sorry." My parents took me back to Edwin's house to collect my remaining belongings, which I did. Upon entering my room, I was scared, but I remained calm. I grabbed my camera and then stopped dead in my tracks. In the hallway leading to my room, I saw Edwin's body and something small lying next to it. I retrieved it up and entered my parents' car, not mentioning Edwin's corpse. I looked at the thing I had picked up and nearly vomited. I was holding my stolen, half-eaten kidney with some black substance on it. How EYELESS Jack came to be by the 1%. Jack had always had poor eyesight. Ever since being a small toddler, he had known that his vision was impaired compared to the rest of his companions. He had to get prescription glasses ever since he had turned 3, and had to deal with having glasses that made him look like a total nerd. The worst part was probably the name-calling like Four Eyes or Harry Potter that had to deal with it. But despite all that, he had gotten used to it and grown into the glasses. Soon enough, everybody accepted them, and some people had even noticed he looked handsome with them on, so everything turned out all right. Or so he thought. When turning 16, Jack's vision had sort of turned dotty. He would see random things happen to him that only he could see, such as at times whenever he was talking to people, their faces would distort in a weird way. They would take the look as if they were melting or collapsing into themselves, and it scared him immensely. He consulted his doctor, who had prescribed the glasses, and he just blew it off as weak eyesight and told him to be on his way. The vision soon got from bad to worse. He'd wake up with black running down his walls, making his room into some deep black box that kept him trapped. At school, anyone he made eye contact with would have their eyes bleed out black and make the most grotesque faces he had ever seen. This led to the point that instead of going to school, Jack locked himself up in his room and wouldn't leave unless it was for food or bathroom breaks. He avoided conversations with anyone, even his family. The only things he would say were like, "Could you hand me a towel?" or any other daily needs. Never anything like chit-chat. While in his room one day, he heard a gentle knock on his door. "Who is it?" he asked. The door creaked open a bit, his mother poking her head in. "You have company. 3 friends of yours want to see if you're all right," she said sweetly. He blinked. "Friends? Who?" Instead of answering, 3 people barged into the room with grins on their faces. Jeff, a tall, lanky boy with a knack for grinning widely, grabbed Jack and put him into a lock, giving a knuckle sandwich. "Hey, bud, where have you been?" he joked, noogieing him. Mason, aka Masky, like his friends called him, stepped in afterwards, a small bit sheepish smile tugging on his lips. He waved while Howard, Hoodie, stepped in afterwards, an annoyed look on his face. "You guys came to see me?" Jack seemed astonished, yet happy at the same time. Mason chuckled. "Of course, we were worried, right, Hoodie?" Hoodie didn't seem that concerned, so he just gave a quick nod and went back to smoking his cigarette in his hands. Jack expected this attitude towards him, though. Hoodie was the type that didn't like to be viewed to have any more emotions than a rock, but he knew well that they were all still good friends. "So, what's been troubling ya?" Jeff asked. Jack's eyes flickered to the door, avoiding anyone's gaze. "I've been seeing weird things lately. Things I don't really understand myself. Like creepy, messed up stuff. My doctor told me it was just part of my poor eyesight, but I don't think he really gets it." Jeff nodded and thought for a minute, scrunching up his nose. "Wish I knew someone who could help you there, dude." He sighed in defeat, shaking his head. Masky thought for a moment too, then quickly snapped his fingers. "Have you tried eating kidneys?" They all looked at Masky with a confused, taken aback look. He laughed a bit. "I don't know where I read it, but I heard somewhere that if you eat enough kidney, your eyesight increases almost instantly. I think it also helps in brain functioning and motor skills. Maybe you're just lacking kidney." Jeff swiped him on the head with the back of his palm, hitting the side of his skull. "Are you stupid? That's one of the Jack stopped him. No, Mason might have a point. I can't remember the last time I had kidney, so maybe it's worth a shot." In a quick motion, he grabbed his favorite black hoodie and bolted out of the room, leaving with a quick note of "got to get to the market" before leaving the house completely. Jeff, Mason, and Howard stared in disbelief at how quick Jack had darted out the door, with Mason only noting under his breath, "I may have been thinking of carrots." "Are you sure you want to eat this? Kidney isn't the best when it comes to tasting." His mother frowned as she served him a slice of the meat that had been cooking in the stove. He nodded eagerly, already cutting into his dinner and shoveling it in his mouth. She watched, almost sickened by the barbaric way her son ate. "How is it?" He chewed, savoring the flavor and taking a moment before answering. "Not that bad. It tastes pretty good." He nodded in approval before eating more. "All right, just take it easy." That was the last thing she said before leaving the room. Jack woke up the next day feeling a little better. He glanced at the walls of his bedroom, and to his surprise, they didn't bleed with black. He smiled, happy that Masky's advice had actually worked. He got up, got dressed, and headed to school with a little bit more of a pep in his step. He waved to people, whistling a couple of songs, and interacted with almost everyone he met. Wow. I'm guessing the kidneys worked? Maskey laughed, seeing how full of life that his friend was. Jack nodded in agreement, smiling more eagerly than ever. Like a charm. I owe you one. He fist-bumped Maskey before heading off to his first class. After a couple of days, the effect of the kidney soon wore off. Jack expected this, so he ran to the supermarket again afterwards, and soon enough his eyesight soon returned to normal like expected. The cycle went on for a couple of months, and it costed most of Jack's allowance. He was now borrowing from his mother and father, with of course doing chores to earn the money, but afterwards, on one particular day, he received horrific news. Out? The butcher nodded his head glumly, while slicing up a piece of pork in his hands. Afraid so. There's been a recall of the kidney all over the state since some sort of sickness was being spread after eating them. Like swine flu or something like that. Jack bit his lip. You don't understand. I need this meat. I might go insane if I don't get it. The butcher only pursed his lips and shook his head. Wish I could help you there, buddy, but we're all out, gone, and don't bother going to other stores either. They're throwing all of it out too. Jack's look of despair worsened, realizing there wouldn't be meat for a while. A month at least, the butcher told him. He would have to deal with the melting faces and bleeding walls again. He walked home in the rain, the raindrops falling on the pavement turning black the moment they hit the concrete. He shut his eyes, trying his best to shut out the terrible visions that demented him, but it wouldn't stop from there. The scenes that he had to witness, they were becoming too much for him. Everything he had to see for a daily basis was now breaking him. The faces became worse, turning more terrifying each day. He couldn't go on for a month. He couldn't. Jack, are you alright? He looked up. A somewhat disembodied figure that he recognized to be his mother stood over him, her eyes bleeding from the sockets with black ooze, her mouth missing and instead replaced with fangs and an overbite. Her hair was knotted and thinned out beyond belief. He screamed, shielding himself from the sight before him. They were worse than before. The vision. He had to get kidney. He just had to keep himself from turning to the worse. He began to tear at his sockets, scratching at his cornea until he felt himself bleed. He didn't stop there. He kept on using the point of his nails to claw out every single scrap of what's left of his eyeballs. He didn't want to see anything anymore. He just wanted kidney. Jack? He looked at his mother. Humans carried kidneys, right? Yeah. He remembered studying it back in biology class. He needed a kidney so bad. Could he... I need... Fu followed the sound of his mother's voice, grabbing into the sewing of her skirt. He tugged until he made sure he had a good grip on her, then attacked. She fell to the floor, scrambling to get away from her own son. Jack! Jack, stop! She shrieked, trying to push him off of her, but Jack had already begun to dig into her skin with his own nails. The flesh on her stomach slowly began to rip apart until he felt muscle showing. He then blindly began to dig around for the prize, where it was located. On the right? Yeah, that's where it was. It had to be. He would take a bite of every single organ in the body until he found his prize. After nibbling on almost 20 body parts, he finally got the taste of his beloved kidney. He slowly savored the flavor of his own mother's organ with one last gulp. He smiled. He needed more. That is the end of today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed my reading. I struggled a little less this time because the stories were a lot shorter, but the next story is going to be probably a considerable amount longer, so I'll definitely have my work cut out for me. If you guys like content like this, be sure to leave a like so YouTube knows that you like this kind of stuff. And if you want specifically more from me, be sure to subscribe. Leave any comments of any creepypastas that are your favorite or you're nostalgic about. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.